Thank you very much. Now we want to move to something a little bit more serious. Minnesota's police have been in the news recently due to high-profile incidents of misconduct involving officers. Within the last 2 years alone, the Twin Cities has been rocked by the murders of Jamar Clark, Philando Castile, and most recently, Justine Ruchek. And these are only the most high-profile cases. According to the Star Tribune, since 2000, 161 Minnesotans have been killed by police officers, and 22 of them were unarmed. And while many police officers are committed public servants working to make their communities safer, numbers like this show that there is a pervasive problem that needs to be addressed. To find out what might have led to these incidents, tonight we'll take 10 to talk about police training, a topic so important they made 7 in-depth documentaries about them in the 80s. The general public knows surprisingly little about police training. In fact, most of what we know about police training we learned from buddy cop series like Chips, Hawaii Five-0, which is just chips but on the beach, and Lethal Weapon, which is just Hawaii Five-0 but one of them is anti-Semitic. But a personal favorite, far and away, is a little gem from the 1990s called Puchinsky.
Peter Boyle is a tough, ill-mannered cop who is run down in the line of duty. But that's not the end of his story. No, he's reincarnated. Ha! Surprise! As a streetwise bulldog in Puchinsky. The talking dog teams up with his astonished former partner to put the bite on crime. It's touching.
Look at me. I've become a dog. It's all sinking in now.
You're a dog. I'm a cop.
This is ridiculous.
Okay. This is what happens when your entire writer's room consists of dogs on cocaine. But the real crime is that they only made 1 episode. After watching shows like that, it's understandable why someone would want to be a police officer. Apparently, you get to eat donuts, do donuts, and bite bad guys in the nuts. And if pop culture wasn't enough to interest people in policing, a few Minnesota law enforcement agencies have produced some great recruitment videos.
I never even considered another department. I only applied to Minneapolis.
If you're looking for opportunity, if you're looking for diversity of culture and people, this is where to be in.
This job is the best kept secret in the world, and just sit back and enjoy the ride.
These are brothers and sisters in blue who hold a common vision for their work and share a bond of commitment to honor and nurture the trust of people in the communities they serve.
No word describes the Minneapolis police force better than the word diversity. But first of all, what you may not know is that video is from 2016. Which is surprising because it looks more like a commercial aired between a rerun of Night Court and Nirvana on MTV's Unplugged. Second, that video makes policing look awesome. What's more admirable of a calling than for someone to sign up to look out for your fellow citizens and make sure Minnesota stays the jewel of the North? But as we watched more of these videos, however, the tone took a noticeable turn.
When I started here, I knew that this was home.
Turn off the car!
Being part of the state patrol, it is a family.
Front passenger, get out of the car. Keep your hands up.
It's a fun job. It's an exciting job.
Stop! State patrol, get on the ground!
And the adrenaline rushes, well, that's a fringe benefit of it.
Yeah. Fringe benefit. Yeah, these videos went from showcasing officers as positive role models in their communities to having so many guns and chase scenes that they are one free pizza away from becoming a laser tag commercial. It also doesn't help that the words the narrator said at the exact moment that these guns were pointed were the words fun and family. Look, the only family that pulls out that many guns together is the Sopranos, and it should stay that way. Also, where is the fun supposed to be? In pointing guns at someone? If you see this video, your expectation is that you will look forward to point guns at dangerous individuals, which is not what most of policing is. Your days are going to be very boring. Just imagine going home to your spouse. Oh, how was work, honey? Not great. I didn't get to pull a gun on someone. What's ridiculous about this is that these situations represent literally the worst possible situations in police work. That's like if a recruitment video for a pilot advertised narrowly saving a plane from crashing. Sure, you should know how to do it, but any day that you have to is a pretty bad day. However, once actual training starts, the whole sun's out, guns out attitude is quickly changed to sun's out, oh God, it's a giant orb of fire, we're all going to die. A lot of police training places officer safety as the primary concern, which in some ways makes sense. Obviously, officers should do their best to keep themselves safe. Do you think streetwise bulldog Puchinsky didn't survey areas for cats before catching his killer? Of course not. He sniffed the perimeter. But when this is taken to an extreme, it can create an environment where officers are conditioned to view situations as more dangerous than they are. Cadets in training are regularly shown videos of officers being beaten, disarmed, or attacked due to inattention or hesitation. Just listen to this Minneapolis police officer explain it.
So you're talking about the time that officers have to deal with and the amount of rounds that can come in at them if they make the wrong decision. You can see where those officers are at a heightened level of awareness as far as the use of force. Because if I shoot and I miss, by the time I figure out I miss and reassess that target, what's going to be happening? I'm going to have 4, 5, 6 rounds back at me. So it's a fine line between one round, see what happens. So we shoot until the threat is no longer a threat.
Yeah, that is horrifying. And what's even more horrifying is that the cadets, up until this point, have been probably thinking that their job is going to be hanging out with their buddy Eric Estrada the whole time, and then suddenly they're told that their life is in danger if they don't neutralize the threat immediately. Imagine preparing for a job cleaning storm drains by watching the movie It. That's essentially what it is. And sadly, this is pretty much par for the course. A lot of police training dates back to the 80s and 90s when overalls were somehow considered cool and when being an officer was considerably more dangerous. That doesn't mean being an officer isn't dangerous today. It is, and officers do put their lives on the line. But with all the changes in policing, it seems a bit odd that we still train officers the way we did when Puchinsky was on the air. Listen, Puchinsky, that's way over the line. You're a loose cannon. Turn in your badge and your squeaky gun. Compare that to the practice of de-escalation, which surprisingly isn't about a shopping mall getting rid of its escalators. It's actually super important. Just ask this former officer.
Well, de-escalation in its simplest form is calming a situation down, while at the same time using less force or no force at all.
Most police shootings happen in the first 2 minutes of an encounter with someone. Anything that lasts more than 3 to 5 minutes, that police shooting rarely happens.
And that slowing down means not being always the aggressor, but slowing it down, using cover, using retreat, taking the time to really assess the threat and then to use other skills to de-escalate it.
Yeah, de-escalation seems like the most important part of a police officer's job. Because when you call the police, no one is hoping that the situation escalates. The only time calling someone in a time of crisis should result in escalation is if it's a WWE match and you call John Cena. But up until now, most officers have received little to no information on how to do that. Take Officer Geronimo Yanez, for example. In his 5 years with the St. Anthony Police Department, he received 48 hours of training in the use of deadly force, 36 hours in officer survival, 20 hours on how to use his weapon, and just 2 hours on de-escalation. And that's not even factoring in all the time spent on the icebreaker games in the beginning. Whether or not an officer feels afraid is super important because it's the question of fear that underpins so many of the laws surrounding police accountability. According to a 1989 U.S. Supreme Court ruling, the standard officers are held to is not should the officer have pulled the trigger, it's was the officer's decision reasonable based on their feeling of fear. You can argue with that standard, and you should, because it's bullshit. But regardless, the current law of the land takes into account officers' fear in the moment. And as long as training promotes more fear without giving officers the tool to make decisions in that fear, we will continue to see officers react violently in situations they don't need to. Because you can only build a house with the tools you have. And if the only tools you have are an itchy trigger finger and a get-out-of-free jail card, you're not going to build a good house. You're going to piss off your family in Monopoly. There's some good news here. Starting in July 1st, a new bipartisan law requires all Minnesota officers to receive 16 hours of de-escalation and implicit bias training every 3 years. That's a great start, and hopefully it's just the beginning of a comprehensive reform of police institutions across the state, including incorporation of implicit bias training, active bystandership, and community policing. Now, I understand all of this coming from a thin-wristed comedian on police reform is not going to do much to change a system that has been in place for decades. That's why we've enlisted the help of a tough, ill-mannered cop reincarnated as an animatronic bulldog to spur elected officials and police departments to change. Take a look.
Ha! Surprise! Hey there, Minnesota Police. It's me, Officer Puchinsky. And I'm here to tell you all about police training reform. I know what you're thinking. Woofda! What a topic! But before you can go out there and lick crime, you have to learn how to lick yourselves. So let this old dog teach you a few new tricks. Number 1, fear. The world is full of scary things. Thunder, vacuums, seeing your own reflection in a glass door when you're not expecting it. It's enough to make even the toughest mutt need a fire hydrant. But if you just take a few seconds, put on your thunder shirt, and bark it over, sometimes you realize things aren't so scary. Your owner didn't die, she just went to get the mail. Number 2, fun. Everybody likes fun, but it's important to remember what should and should not be the fun parts of your job. Fun things include fetch, putting your head out a car window, and barking at any squirrel bastard you see. Things that shouldn't be considered fun include the use of force. Bad dog! So remember, it's only fun if it's fun for everybody. Except those damn squirrels. Keep this in mind, and you'll go from a mangy mutt to an air bud in no time. And remember, as a cop, your bark should always be worse than your bite. I'm a dog.
Stay nice, Minnesota.